What's up, everybody? Go Burns, welcoming you to another episode of my review series. Over here on my Go Burns V&R channel, we do vlogs as well as reviews over here in case you were wondering. And last week I did put up a new vlog regarding nostalgia, just in case you are curious about my vlog series. Today we are reviewing the new movie Cult of Chucky, which is the 7th film in the Chucky franchise. And as a kid of the 80s and 90s who loved and was terrified by horror films, one of the characters that really terrified me the most was Chucky, the doll that came to life. And no one else believed you, but the doll was alive. And it was also a psychopath that was killing people left and right. And you didn't know if it was going to kill you next. So this is a fear I had when I was young, and one of my baby sisters had these dolls. They weren't Cabbage Patch dolls, but they were one of those typical dolls that had kind of like a very eerie looking face, similar to the Good Guy dolls, which are based off of, I guess, the Cabbage Patch dolls or whatever dolls. There's so many dolls out there. Dolls still creep me out. We have an art gallery nearby. It's a very popular art gallery and has some beautiful pieces of art, but there's a wing that is dedicated to dolls from like the 1800s. It's very creepy and I still won't go in there. But at the same time, like, I had these nightmares constantly about Chucky coming after me when I was a kid, and even my baby sister's doll coming to life. And yeah, so that's been stuck with me for quite some time. So whenever it comes to things I'm terrified of, be it Chucky and Freddy or Jason or Michael Myers, of course, I'm excited whenever there's a new movie or a video game that comes out revolved around these characters, and Cult of Chucky is no exception. Now, before we continue, just like with my reviews, we're going to do non-spoilers, and then we're going to move on to spoilers as well. So I'll let you know before the spoiler section whether or not I think you should watch this or not. And then we'll move on to the spoilers. But we will be probably discussing spoilers from Curse of Chucky and previous Chucky films. So hopefully you're going into this already watching the other 6 movies in the Chucky franchise, like Child's Play 1 through 3, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky. So Cult of Chucky follows the events of Curse of Chucky. By the way, I loved Curse of Chucky. I felt like Curse of Chucky got the series back on the right course, whereas like Seed of Chucky and Bride of Chucky kind of was deviating a little too much. I mean, I liked Bride of Chucky, but Seed of Chucky was probably the worst one in the franchise. Curse of Chucky felt more like Child's Play, you know, the first 3 Child's Play movies. And I would say the same thing goes for Cult of Chucky as well. So it's set, I think it's 4 years after the events of Curse of Chucky. You have, once again, Brad Dourif voicing Chucky, and his daughter playing a character that was introduced in Curse of Chucky, which is Nika. Nika, of course, was, I guess, her mom was the last victim of Charles Lee Ray before he was gunned down in Chicago, and he took possession of a Good Guy doll, becoming Chucky. But, so she's been committed to an asylum and blamed for the murders that transpired, her family being killed, her niece being orphaned. And it doesn't only follow her story, it also follows another important character in the Chucky franchise, Andy Barclay. Now, some of you probably are familiar with Andy Barclay. He was the main protagonist in the first 3 Child's Play movies, and he is played by the same actor. Well, from Child's Play 1 and 2. They got a different actor to play him in Child's Play 3. But they brought back Alex Vincent for not only Curse of Chucky, because there's a cameo at the end of Curse of Chucky, and you know that plays into Cult of Chucky as well, which I think is really cool. We'll talk about that in the spoiler section. So it goes back and forth from what's going on with Nika inside this asylum, as well as Andy. And eventually, you know, those 2 roads converge, obviously. And I will say this right now, without spoiling it. The premise of Cult of Chucky is terrifying. It's even more terrifying than what was already introduced, in the Child's Play franchise, the idea of a doll coming to life. So yeah, it was very, very eerie. Like, oh my God, that's even scarier. This concept, this idea that writer director Don Mancini came up with. By the way, he is the writer of the entire Chucky franchise, all the way back to the beginning. He has had a part in the Chucky series. So that's one thing I really like about this franchise, is that Don Mancini has been there from the very beginning, and it hasn't been handed off to other people. This has been basically his vision throughout all 7 movies. And I feel like Cult of Chucky is definitely up there with Curse of Chucky, and it's definitely better than Seed of Chucky, and I would say it's possibly even better than Bride of Chucky. Maybe even better than Child's Play 3. I mean, I still think Child's Play and Child's Play 2 are 2 of the best, and then right under it I would put probably Curse of Chucky, and then under that I would put in 4th place Cult of Chucky. Then right under that I would probably put let's see, Child's Play 3. Then at the very bottom I would put Seed of Chucky. I just did not like Seed of Chucky very much. But there's definitely some very terrifying moments. There's a bit of dark humor as well, which is to be expected from a Chucky film going forward. There's a lot of gore, by the way, so everyone that wants blood and gore and all that sort of stuff, you got your wish when it comes to Cult of Chucky. The issues that I kind of have are the fact that a lot of the characters in the asylum are quote-unquote interesting, but you're not very sympathetic for them. You have no sympathy for these characters. Well, maybe 1 or 2, but the rest of them you're like, I don't care what happens to them. I really don't. I mean, for one thing, they're in an asylum. Obviously, they're in the asylum for a very good reason. I mean, we care about the main character, Nika, played by Brad Dourif's daughter, Fiona Dourif, by the way, in case you were wondering. So we do care about her because we have kind of a rapport of her from the last Chucky film, Curse of Chucky. But for just about everybody else, I really don't care about anyone else in the movie. Oh, by the way, Jennifer Tilly returns once again as Tiffany, Chucky's woman, his bae, his wife, whatever that is between him and Tiffany, which was, initiated in Bride of Chucky. So Jennifer Tilly returns, as well as Alex Vincent, Fiona Dourif, along with Brad Dourif. And, I would say if you are a Chucky fan, you will enjoy this film. And if you're not, then you probably won't care for it. But if you have Netflix, I would recommend you check it out, because it's Netflix. I mean, you're already paying for Netflix anyways. It's 90 minutes long, and it's there already. I don't know if I would purchase it unless you're just like a hardcore Child's Play Chucky fan and you just want to add the 7th film to your collection. Then I would recommend you do that, or simply just go and Redbox it. You could do that as well. With that being said, I think that this film could have been way better if it was given a bit more money by Universal to make. It was obviously, made on a budget. It was released straight to video and straight to Netflix. So yeah, the budget wasn't very much. In fact, according to Wikipedia, I can't find a budget. Usually they tell you what the budget is, and as far as I can tell, there's no budget. But I'm sure obviously a few $1 million went into the making of Cult of Chucky. But I think that this could have been a very good movie put in the theaters. They stopped doing that for some reason. I thought Curse of Chucky would have been really good in theaters, and once again, Curse of Chucky had the same issue. It would have been a lot better if Universal would have given Don Mancini a little bit bigger budget to make that film, and maybe even a horror director, because Don Mancini does a decent job as a director. By the way, he directed Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, and Seed of Chucky. But at the end of the day, he's specifically more of a writer than a director. But at the same time, it's still a very good film. It's just that there are parts during Cult of Chucky where you really feel like that this could have been better served on the big screen with a little bit bigger budget. And, some things could have looked a little bit better. But alas, it is what it is. And I've seen way worse straight-to-video movie releases, and so far, overall, when you look at the fact that this is the 7th film in the Chucky franchise, it's pretty good. It's pretty solid. I mean, you've had some decent ones, like I mentioned, Child's Play 2, Child's Play 3 was okay. Bride of Chucky I would say that was a little bit better than Child's Play 3. Seed of Chucky was the worst, but then you go back up again with Curse of Chucky and then Cult of Chucky. So overall, I would say that the franchise, if you're into Chucky, it lives up to the rest of the franchise. And there's some things that we're going to talk about in the spoilers that some of the hardcore Chucky fans might have a problem with, and I sympathize with that point of view. But at the same time, the reality is this is the same guy that wrote all the other Chucky films from the very beginning. So if he wants to change something, it's his prerogative to change it, in my opinion. So in conclusion, I enjoyed my 90 minutes with Cult of Chucky. I don't know if I'd purchase it on video. I did purchase Curse of Chucky, and I don't regret buying that. It was a really good film, despite the fact it was obviously low budget. Same thing goes with Cult of Chucky. But at the same time, I do think that, once again, a missed opportunity by Universal. If they would have given Don Mancini a bigger budget for Curse and Cult, I think that it would have been a nice 2 shots in the arm for the Chucky franchise. But at the same time, there's still plenty of Chucky fans out there that are going to go pick up Cult of Chucky, watch it, and enjoy it, whether on a video, buying it from Best Buy, Target, or whatever retailer you go to, as well as either renting it via Redbox or simply watching it on Netflix. The difference is Netflix doesn't have like the extra ending post-credit. We'll talk about that in the spoilers, but there is once again a post-credit scene similar to Curse of Chucky, which brings Andy back into the scene. Chucky comes out of a box and he's going to surprise Andy, and Andy's ready with him with a shotty to his face. But there's a lot of interactions between Andy and Chucky that are very good. I enjoyed those interactions as well, especially given the history that these two have of each other, Andy and Chucky, going all the way back to the very first film, the original Child's Play. So yeah, I would say that if you are a fan of the Chucky franchise, I would definitely, at the very least, consider watching it on Netflix or renting it via Redbox. But if you're a hardcore Chucky fan and you enjoyed Curse of Chucky and you want to see what happened to Nika and what happened between Chucky and Andy, then I would definitely consider picking up Cult of Chucky as well. Like I said, it's definitely far from the worst in the Chucky franchise. It's way above Seed of Chucky, and I think it's better than Child's Play 3. I even think it's better than Bride of Chucky. So I would say it's probably, up there in, I would say, the top 4. Once again, like Child's Play 2, Curse of Chucky. Then in 4th place, I would put Cult of Chucky in my Chucky rating. Okay, so with that out of the way, let us move from non-spoilers to spoilers. So for everyone still watching, prepare to be spoiled. So hopefully you've already watched Cult of Chucky. By the way, let me know below in the comment section what you thought about Cult of Chucky. Did you love it? Did you hate it? How would you rank it with the other films in the Chucky franchise? Okay, so now we're officially in the spoiler zone. You have been warned. Okay, I'm not going to warn you any further. Plus, it's up there on the screen right now, spoilers. All right, so yes, at the end of Curse of Chucky, you have Nika. She's been committed to an asylum. And Chucky goes after Andy. Andy shoots Chucky in the face. 4 years later, Andy still has Chucky's head in a safe. And he's been torturing Chucky. And I really don't blame Andy. After everything that Chucky put Andy through in the first 3 Child's Play films, I don't blame Andy at all. I mean, this fucker ruined Andy's life ever since he was a kid. So to get a little payback on Chucky, to want to make Chucky suffer, yeah, I don't blame Andy at all for what's transpiring. So what happens to Nika is she gets moved to a medium security wing, to a different asylum. She's at one asylum, then she gets moved to a different one, and she meets some interesting characters. There's a scene 15 minutes into the video where I had to stop it like, wow. I mean, it wasn't gory or anything, but she just meets this one dude, and like 15 minutes in, wheelchair sex is happening. I'm like, whoa, damn. And it makes you wonder because like Nika's character is paralyzed from like the waist down. So I was just thinking to myself, does she actually enjoy this? I mean, is there like still nerves working there? I'm guessing. I mean, because what would be the point in still having sex with somebody if you weren't able to enjoy it, right? So I found that scene interesting, to say the least. But like the characters overall, the inmates. I mean, I found some of them to be funny, and each one has their own little like typical asylum quirks, including the guy she was fucking. But at the same time, you have no sympathy for these people. You have no sympathy for the main therapist. You have, I mean, the nurse. I don't really have much sympathy for her because she comes across as very cold and frigid. And the other guy, the orderly, I mean, I would say I'm the most sympathetic with him. But like everyone else in the asylum that ultimately get murdered by Chucky, I didn't really care for. I mean, I'm like, okay. Like, I care if these fuckers die. I don't give two shits for any of them. I mean, they're all a bunch of wackos in their own special way. But what really terrifies the idea of Chucky is the fact that this doll could come alive and get you. But what if it wasn't just that one Chucky doll or that one good guy doll? What if Chucky eventually possessed the ability to possess any good guy doll he wanted? And there was multiple Chuckies. That's what happens in Cult of Chucky. Now, some people may have an issue with this because of, previous canon, written by Don Mancini regarding how it works. How Chucky only takes possession of one good guy doll, and in the previous films he was trying to take possession of Andy at first, and then he was trying to take possession of other kids. And, the longer he stayed in the good guy doll, it started becoming human. It started developing like blood and organs. But eventually there was a point in the franchise where Chucky became accepted of being Chucky, of just being a damn doll. And I think that's what we have to remember, the fact that he did accept the fact that he preferred being a doll after all these years of trying to get out of the doll and take possession of a new kid so he could grow up and, actually live a life again and go on to, I guess, become a mass murderer once more. Leaving off, where, Charles Lee Ray did in Chicago, along with, Chucky. But at the same time, I like the idea. If I was a kid and I watched Cult of Chucky, it would terrify me. Because now you're not just thinking about that one doll that might be alive. Whereas, the thousands upon thousands that were produced aren't alive. They're okay. They're kind of creepy looking. But it's that one doll. But what if all the dolls were Chucky? So he develops this ability, which he quickly explains in kind of like a comment like, well, I picked up something else in Voodoo, Voodoo for Dummies or some shit about how I could take possession of other things. And basically, I guess he kind of clones himself, and so he starts taking possession of all these other Chuckies, and you're left to wonder like what the hell's going on, because you think Andy has the only Chucky, Chucky's severed head and half of his head blown off, but then Chucky's wreaking havoc in the asylum, and then you're wondering like, okay, well, which Chucky's the real Chucky? They're all Chucky. So that was kind of a twist, and I like the twist. Some Chucky fans probably won't, but like I said. It ties into the whole terrifying aspect of, a doll coming to life. That's one reason why people, I guess, like Annabelle. I haven't seen the Annabelles yet, but that's one reason why people like and are terrified of the premise of Chucky. So, yeah, instead of one doll, Chucky's multiple dolls. And there's definitely some interaction between the dolls, between the Chuckies. It's kind of funny to see them all talking shit and, talk about, oh, who's going to go kill Andy? I'm going to go kill Andy. Because ultimately Andy decides to go after Chucky because he's hearing about what's happening at the asylum with Nika. He even tries earlier, like, to convince the same doctor that's overseeing Nika that Chucky is real because of the severed head, and the doctor didn't believe him. And this was obviously videotaped that he was watching with Chucky's head. And Chucky was laughing because of the fact that no one would believe Andy. And then Andy started torturing Chucky again. I can't really blame him for that. And then, of course, Jennifer Tilly's character ended up becoming the legal guardian of Nika's niece, which was the only survivor from Curse of Chucky. And apparently, they don't show this, but Chucky ended up taking possession of her niece. And so not only was he running around as Chucky dolls killing people, he was also running around as a little girl killing people. But unfortunately, the little girl got killed probably killed by cops. They don't exactly explain what happened to the little girl, except for she died. And Chucky was going with the same premise, was that just like with dolls, no one would expect a little girl to be a serial killer. And so ultimately Alice, I think that's her name, Nika's niece, gets killed. I don't know how she gets killed, but she gets killed, and that's what ends up happening to poor Alice. So it wasn't a happy ending for Nika's niece, and it leads Nika to almost commit suicide. And Chucky, just arrived at the asylum, and he's deciding, you know what? Nope, you don't get off that easy. He has plans for Nika, by the way. So he patches her up, when it seems like she's about to pass on into the great blue yonder. And she wakes up realizing that, Chucky is there because, like, the pool of blood, it says something about, like, not so fast. And then he goes and he starts, his killing spree throughout the asylum. And everybody believes that Nika is responsible for it. And eventually, one by one, they get picked off. But at the same time, you're really not sympathetic because, like, each one of these characters are kind of wacky. And there's even one girl that gets bitten by Chucky when she's trying to throw one of the dolls down a chute. And she becomes convinced, like, yeah, she's right. Chucky's real. But unfortunately, the same doctor overseeing Nika oversees all these other patients and has her, like, confined to, like, a bed, tied down, drugged. And Chucky's able to brutally murder her. And there's a lot of really good murder scenes in Cult of Chucky. A lot of gore. So for a lot of you into that sort of thing, yeah, there's definitely, buckets of blood going on in Cult of Chucky. And so Jennifer Tilly's, playing her part as well as Tiffany. But she's also Jennifer Tilly if you go by the seat of Chucky. So it's kind of weird how reality bleeds into... It's all fourth wall, but it's still kind of fun. So you still have Tiffany around, and no mention of Glenn or Glinda from Seed of Chucky. I think she actually alludes to it, like something about the three of us, but at the same time, there is no Glenn, there is no Glinda from Seed of Chucky, which does not bother me because I did not care for that angle from Seed of Chucky, none at all. That's one of the reasons why it's the worst on my list of the Chucky films. So yeah, you have Tiffany. She makes a few appearances as well. And ultimately, Andy gets himself committed to the asylum, but he sneaks in a good guy doll that has a gun in it. And it just so happens that it's that good guy doll that gets possessed and comes to life. And he's the one that goes and tries to kill Andy, who's in this padded cell. And Andy gets the drop on him and is able to rip out the gun and murder the Chucky doll that he sent into the asylum before he got possessed, obviously. But what ends up transpiring is Chucky has plans for Nika. Not to kill her, but to take possession of Nika. And he succeeds. He takes possession of Nika. It's an interesting twist. So whereas she was confined to a wheelchair because of the fact now she is possessed by Chucky, and if a doll can come to life and start walking and running around, then so could technically... a woman confined to a wheelchair. So Nika's now, she's not dead. Like Chucky says, he's put her to sleep or in timeout. So he's just in possession of her body. So she kills her doctor. And the doctor, by the way, is a piece of, what? He's a piece of work. Apparently, during hypno sessions, he's been kind of having his way with Nika, it's implied. So he's kind of been intentionally keeping Nika close to him because he kind of enjoys having that little wheelchair action, I suppose. But, Chucky is even surprised by, a piece of work this guy is. So he's like, wow, I don't know if I want to kill him or take notes. That's, what he kind of does to Chucky, because Chucky's like, what? And there's several moments where Chucky's just like going in the asylum and he's like, these people, like, they are really, really fucked up, Like, there's, like, one older lady that thinks she's a ghost all the time. And, Chucky's just walking down the hallway. And she just happens to be outside of her room. And she's looking at Chucky. And they have this conversation. And she's like, don't be afraid. I'm a ghost. And Chucky's like, the fuck? And he's like, you realize I'm a walking, talking doll with a scalpel. And she's like, it's okay. I'm insane. I see things. I'm crazy. And he's like, I'm dealing with you next. He just walks off like, unbelievable. And then there's like one other character. She apparently kills her baby. And basically, like, they introduce one Chucky, one good guy doll. And this one is not possessed yet. It's not the one that Jennifer Tilly sends in, which is, I guess, the possessed Chucky. There's technically 3 Chucky dolls, I guess. But the first one isn't possessed at the asylum. And so, she kind of grows a fondness for that Chucky doll. She starts to treat it like her baby. But then when Jennifer Tilly's, I was about to say Tinnifer for some reason. I guess we could call her Tinnifer because it is Tiffany and Jennifer Tilly like merged into one character. So when Tiffany arrives to have a discussion with Nika, telling her that she's the legal guardian of Alice, and Alice has died, and how Alice wanted her to have this Chucky doll. This Chucky doll, by the way, is the one possessed by Chucky. So Chucky ends up possessing the other Chucky doll. And the Chucky doll that the one girl that killed her kid has kind of an infatuation with, they developed this weird relationship. It's very weird. It's kind of like how I would say Andy and Chucky were at the very beginning of Child's Play, where like there was actually some sort of friendship, and Chucky was actually talking to him and Andy was actually listening to him because he was a kid. He was very susceptible to things that Chucky would tell him. But it was very similar, but at the same time, the fact that you have this woman that was kind of twisted, who killed her kid, tried to justify it, now treating Chucky like her kid. And so they developed this weird relationship. Like there's even a scene where like she has Chucky like, sucking on her tit. And then there's also a scene where she tries to kill him, but for some reason Chucky's okay with it, I guess. But then they bury that Chucky doll. That Chucky doll comes out from the grave and then ends up back in her room. And then they talk briefly about how they have this special relationship that everyone else would not understand. And for some reason, she knows that Chucky's going to kill her. And she's okay with it. She's like, all right, will it hurt? And then this other Chucky is like, I'll do my best. And so he becomes a one-armed Chucky because he uses his arm to, I guess, strangle her or, I don't know, shove it down her throat. His arm. Okay, his arm down her throat. So it seemed like that Chucky didn't really want to kill her. It just seemed like they had this weird thing going on. But anyways, so it's left on a cliffhanger because one of the Chuckies takes possession of Nika. And Andy ends up confined. He's trapped inside the asylum because he won't kill Nika because Nika is currently in possession by Chucky. So his plan was to save her, but he can't save her just yet because Chucky has her. And he either had to kill Nika or let Nika go. So he chose not to shoot. And so he ends up trapped inside that same padded cell he was in, when the other Chucky came after him. And so Nika makes her escape with, the dead nurse, dead security guard, dead bodies everywhere. And so it's a happy ending for Chucky. He's reunited outside the asylum with Tiffany. They have a moment, Nika, Chucky, and Tiffany. Well, yeah, it was interesting. Little girl on girl. And then they both get in the car. And in the back, it turns out there's also a Tiffany doll. And the Tiffany doll is also possessed. So apparently, Tiffany, just like Chucky, has the ability to take possession of more than one thing. So, Tiffany's in possession of the doll. Tiffany's in possession of Jennifer Tilly. And so I guess you have two Tiffany clones. You have like multiple Chucky clones. And you still have the severed Chucky head back at Andy's house. And in the post-credits scene, which I watched on YouTube, it brings back another Child's Play character, Kyle from Child's Play 2. And so I guess it's a very short scene. It's like 30 seconds, but from what I read, it explained that Andy told Kyle about the other Chucky head that he had. And so she comes to the house, and I guess they're setting it up for an 8th Chucky film and maybe even a final showdown. That'd be kind of cool. Where, like Kyle goes to the asylum, she rescues Andy, and then they set off to go and try and save Nika and maybe stop Chucky and Tiffany once and for all. It'd be kind of cool to see how it plays out in an 8th Chucky film. And there's a rumor that there's going to be like a Chucky in space. I really don't want them to go that angle. I know a lot of it is, Don Mancini making fun of, some other horror genres. But I don't like the idea of a Chucky in space. I would rather there be like an 8th and final conflict between Chucky and Andy and Kyle. It would just be really cool if they, kind of like made, that like a final trilogy, because you have the Child's Play trilogy, then in the middle you have, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, and then you have Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, and then wrap up that trilogy with a final showdown, between these two groups, Andy, Kyle, trying to get back Nika, trying to somehow save her. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But on the other hand, you have, like Chucky and Tiffany, and probably even Glenn and Glenda as well. So, or at least Glenda, Like, Glenn's more, he's not as bad as Glinda. Glinda's definitely a chip off the block of Chucky, so to speak, or chip off the plastic. I don't know. Well, one thing I really do like about this franchise is the fact that, despite the fact you see so many other movies, TV shows, rebooting, remaking, that this franchise continues. And I hope that that's going to be the case. I mean, if there's going to be a reboot, if there's going to be a remake, at least wrap this up first. What they started with Curse of Chucky, by bringing the series back to, I guess, some relevance after Seed of Chucky. So hopefully with the success, hopefully it has been successful. It's been very well reviewed by everybody else. Well, most everybody else. I enjoyed it. So hopefully Don Mancini will get a chance to make at least one more Chucky film before there is a reboot down the road. You know it's going to happen. I hate it, but it is what it is. Almost everything gets rebooted and remade these days. But I want to see at least one more Chucky film with Brad Dourif voicing Chucky, Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany, Alex Vincent as Andy Barkley, the actress that plays Kyle, brought back as well, along with Brad's daughter Fiona as Nika. I want to see how that story plays out. I'm sure that Don Mancini has a vision, has an idea, and I don't really want a Chucky in space. It doesn't make any sense because, I mean, look at where we are right now. We're nowhere near being able to go into space. I mean, we have a space station or 2 space stations, but we haven't been back to the moon in like decades. So obviously a Chucky in space would be set like Jason X, or Leprechaun in space, like far off into the future. Okay, if you want to do that, fine. Do that eventually, just for fun. But I'd rather have a direct sequel to, Cult of Chucky and, Curse of Chucky. I'd rather have that than Chucky in space. But anyways, that's just my 2 cents. Once again, I thoroughly enjoyed Cult of Chucky, and I think it would have been way better if it would have had a bigger budget, because there were some things that obviously looked a little cheap. They could have been done better. But at the same time, I enjoyed Cult of Chucky. It was definitely worth 90 minutes of my time to enjoy, especially since I've enjoyed and have been terrified by previous Chucky films. And I very much hope that we do get a third and final addition to this new Chucky trilogy. Something to wrap up what they've set in place regarding Curse of Chucky as well as Cult of Chucky. So hopefully we'll get that. At least I hope so. But once again, I'm interested in your thoughts, your views, and your opinions regarding Cult of Chucky as well as the Chucky franchise altogether. And let me know if you liked it, if you hated it, and how would you rank Cult of Chucky compared to the rest of the Chucky franchise?